the Eagles have been linked to another safety option who just hit the open market and could be a really good fit for Philadelphia. DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to be a free agent. Would he take less to come to Philadelphia? And Darius, he basically admitted he was this close to signing with the Baltimore Ravens. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here. Welcome to the Thomas Mott Show on a Monday. We're getting closer and closer to the NFL draft, and yet free agents and possible signings with Philadelphia are still in at least the scope on a Monday morning here. Let's start with Ryan Neal, move over to DeAndre Hopkins, and finish with Darius. I'll go over here with the SI.com article on safety Ryan Neal, where they talk about how Seattle has rescinded their offer to free agent Ryan Neal, and now possibly could be reunited with now defensive coordinator Sean Desai in Philadelphia. Let's take a look. Quote, so far, the Eagles have broken even in the safeties loss versus safeties gain department this offseason. They let C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Marcus Epps leave for the Lions and Raiders respectively, but added Terrell Edmunds and Justin Evans on one-year deals from the Steelers and Buccaneers respectively. Suddenly, though, a new name has appeared on the horizon after the Seahawks rescinded the restricted free agent tender they offered to safety Ryan Neal. Neal now hits the open market, begging the question, would 3 additions at one spot be too much? Or Howie Roseman say, who not, the more, or say, really, why not, the more the merrier? Most obvious connection between Neal and a potential one-year contract with the Eagles is Sean Desai. The Eagles' new defensive coordinator and Neal spent last season together when Desai was Seattle's assistant head coach and defensive assistant. Under Desai, Neal played in 14 games with 10 starts. He had 8 passes defended, 1 interception, 66 tackles, with 1 sack and 1 forced fumble, end quote. So not only is there the option of him actually becoming a free agent, which he is now, they rescinded his restricted free agent tender, but he does have some history with Sean Desai, and this feels like one of those options where Desai could go to Howie Roseman and say, hey, I like Edmunds, Justin Reed, or Justin Evans. Sure, that makes some sense. But why don't we go get the guy that I worked with during my time in Seattle and I really loved? I can vouch for him. He's 27 years old. He played 73% of the defensive snaps for Sean Desai. Go out and get this guy. It would make a ton of sense. The problem is, I think that if you're Neal, you want a long-term deal. I'm not sure if Philadelphia is ready to offer a long-term deal to a safety after they basically retooled their safety position with 2 cheap one-year deal signings and still have a Jalen Hurts pending contract extension, which each day gets closer and closer to being fulfilled. And so if Neal wanted to come and do kind of a one-year C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the Lions type deal, 1 year, $5.5 million, 1 year, $6 million, kind of a prove-it deal, come play for a really good defense, a defensive coordinator you're familiar with, go have a chance to win a Super Bowl, and then get a big bag in 2024, it makes a bunch of sense. But the odds of this happening to me seemingly are very slim. My guess is they'll eventually work something out with Neal and the Seattle Seahawks, but again, the fact that Desai was formerly with Seattle and Philadelphia, even with Edmunds, who I think is going to be their starter, could really want another safety. Keep an eye on this one. Let me know what you guys think about it down below in the comment section. I think Sirianni has already really raved about Reed Blankenship being one of the safeties. I think Edmunds is going to be the other, but, and this is a big but, if you have a scenario where Philadelphia wants to go out and get a better option than Terrell Edmunds, a 1 year, $5 or $6 million deal for Neal could make a ton of sense. Thumbs up if you guys agree. Let's go over here to the situation with DeAndre Hopkins, and this is something I've wanted to talk about. I've talked about a little bit on the show, but it's not necessarily really blossomed into anything because you have to trade for him up until reportedly yesterday, as we're going to see. And trading for DeAndre Hopkins was going to cost, a second-round draft pick, a third-round draft pick. You assume his massive contract. It just didn't make sense for the Eagles, who don't really need a receiver, but might want a wide receiver 3 who's better than Quez Watkins. However, a new report from Albert Breer suggests that there could be a big change in this situation. Here it is. ProBible.com has the report, quote, the Arizona Cardinals may be releasing all-pro receiver DeAndre Hopkins, according to Sports Illustrated reporter Albert Breer. Some NFL teams think the Cardinals will be releasing Hopkins due to the lack of interest in trading for his contract. During an appearance on the Greg Bedard podcast, Breer stated that some teams think that Cardinals are going to cut him. The Cardinals will wind up cutting him, Breer said. His market is not great right now, he further added. There's nobody who's willing to take on Hopkins' contract and pay the Cardinals' initial asking price. The Cardinals initially asked teams for a second-round pick plus something else in exchange for Hopkins. However, no team has shown any interest in meeting the Cardinals' asking price. Hopkins is expected to make approximately $34 million over the next 2 seasons, which is a significant amount of money for most teams. And the last part of the deal is why they don't want to trade for DeAndre Hopkins. A second for Hopkins is not ridiculous, but a second for Hopkins, and then assuming $34 million, which as we look at his contract here, is $19.45 this season for a wide receiver, which is unbelievably insane. And then 14.915 next year never made sense. And so that's why I never really wanted to bring up DeAndre Hopkins in the past, because Philadelphia was never going to pay this kind of money, nor were they going to give up a number 2 or second round draft pick in order to do so. If he's cut, though, that means the market is going to dramatically shift. Now, do I think Philadelphia would pay $15 million for DeAndre Hopkins? No. Also, that's what Odell Beckham Jr. reportedly wants on a 1-year deal. But if DeAndre Hopkins wanted to sign a 1-year, go get a chip sort of deal, Philadelphia would make some sense. And you could see a scenario where A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, they try to, bring him over. They try and convince him, hey, come play with Jalen Hurts. And if we were to sign a 1-year, $8 million deal, or a 1-year, 10, maybe, Howie? I'm not sure about 10, but 1 year, decent price for a veteran wide receiver to come in and be a third horse on a massive chariot that could really go do some damage in the 2023 NFL season. It's at least worth mentioning. Now, going to get comments down below saying, Thomas, this would never happen. It's ridiculous. We don't need him. I understand. But because of the new update, as of Albert Breer yesterday, stating that he's going to be released, that does mean Philadelphia could potentially kick the tires on him versus what was virtually impossible due to the fact that they were never going to trade a second-round draft pick and then eat that massive contract. So this is, way less likely than Ryan Neal, but you could still maybe put like a 5% chance on it. And so I'll at least bring it up here on a Monday. But would you guys want him, and what would you pay for him? That's what I'm curious about. What would you pay for DeAndre Hopkins in terms of a contract? I'm fascinated to see where the comment section goes with this one. Thumbs up, though, for the idea. Just the idea of DHop, Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Bijan Robinson. I don't want to think about that. It'd be the best offense. It'd be the greatest show on turf. Part 2, essentially. We haven't seen that, obviously, since the Rams many, many moons ago. All right, final quick story here. This to me is very, very fun. This is DeAndre Hopkins. This is Big Play Slay on his podcast, the Big Play Slay podcast, talking about how close he was to being a Baltimore Raven. You remember, we talked about it here on the show. There were multiple reports saying that he was going to be traded to the Ravens. If they released him, he would sign with the Ravens. And everyone said, oh, no, it's not true, not true. Well, Big Play himself did eventually admit it in this viral clip that has almost 500,000 views. Take a listen to this one.
And I ain't want to get out there, but one thing I almost didn't know now, I was almost this close. A Baltimore Raven. I was this close. But, I wanted to be Eagle. I stayed an Eagle because I know me and Howie was going to figure something out. But the Baltimore Ravens was the first team that called, and they offered just what I wanted. And I just said, hey, the Eagles do that, I'm going to stay an Eagle. So it was nice now, man. I almost was a Raven. I was almost a different bird.
There you go. And that's a good indication and a good little inside look at how free agency works, right? Hey, we'll give you this. And then you go, well, I mean, I would like that, but I'd rather stay in Philadelphia. My wife loves Philadelphia. My family loves Philadelphia. Hey, Eagles, this is what the Ravens are offering. What are you going to do? And the rest is history. So the reports that, he wasn't going to go to Baltimore, it's ridiculous, were untrue. He was going to go to Baltimore up until Howie Roseman swooped back in. And that all stemmed from the fact that Philadelphia was able to pivot from C.J. Gardner-Johnson after the drama that ensued with his whole situation and put that money basically back into Darius Slay. It works out very well. I saw some stats saying that both Slay and Bradbury are not even top 10 highest paid corners at their positions the next couple of years. And so, again, Howie Roseman worked his magic. I know a lot of people like to rip Big Play Slay the second half of the year last year. I think he still did a very, very good job. I think he still has at least 2 more solid years of being a cornerback left in him. Bradbury hopefully has 4 or 5. Philadelphia's in very good hands, and I think defensively they're in a lot better hands than people do realize. And one of the reasons, of course, is Darius Slay coming back. So very cool and very interesting with those little look-ins. I love the fact that players are getting podcasts. And I know Colin Cowherd's Volume, this is where this one comes from, does a lot of stuff in terms of Draymond Green's podcast, and who is the other person? Joe Burrow appears on Cowherd's podcast, and obviously Big Play Slay has his. I'm all for it. I think it's great. I'd love to have these guys on as well, hopefully in the future, but the fact that they're able to voice some of the things that we're speculating on is really good for everyone involved, including you, the consumer. So thumbs up for that. I think it's some really, really good stuff there, and fun of Big Play Slay to kind of reveal what was going on. So, okay, plenty more stuff happening the next couple of days and weeks. I'm going to do a 7-round Eagle mock draft. I've not done an official, full Eagles mock draft. I'm working on that one. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday. All depends on what goes on in the land of the National Football League. So be sure to subscribe. We just got to 10,500 subs here on the channel. We're almost at 2 million total views. It's unbelievable. Working on some fresh hats. Stay tuned for that. Hopefully in the coming days I can reveal what's going on with that situation. Some really cool stuff in terms of that. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I'm Thomas Mott. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.